my capture right now. And I'm going to ask y'all, what happens when a holding clutch is applied? What happens when a holding clutch is applied? A, the gear ratio is reduced. B, the planetary gears move freely. C, a gear set element is held and power flow is redirected. Or D, the fluid pressure in the valve body is reduced. Huh? Think about the word holding. What happens when a holding clutch is applied? Now, you guys that already done this test, you're supposed to know these answers, okay? What are they?
Is it the planetary gear? I think it's B. I don't see something.
Wait a minute. Whenever you hold something, something's going to move freely? What's up with that? That don't make any sense, does it? What about a gear set element is held? Holding, held. Don't those words go together? All right, then. A gear set element is held and power flow is redirected. So, what do the hydraulic clutches and bands do?
It's not the answer for B, so it's only 3 choices.
There's only 3 choices on this one. That's right. What do the hydraulic clutches and bands do? Somebody that's already done it, you're supposed to be able to tell me. A would be hold and drive the planetary gear sets. B would be produce various output ranges of torque and speed. What is it?
I think it's B. I just don't have the test in front of me.
C would be, and that's why I'm reading it to you. Okay, C would be provide fluid reservoir and hydraulic passages.
I believe that was B.
Hmm?
I believe.
B or D?
I said B.
Boy? Wrong. That one's A. That's it. He missed that one already on the test in there. So, all right. The transmission fluid pump is usually driven by A, the torque converter hub, B, the transmission input shaft, C, the transmission output shaft, or excuse me, the engine output shaft, or D, the torque converter hub or pump input shaft. A would partially be right, but there's pump input shafts on some transmissions. Remember on that ATX transmission I showed you a cutaway of the other day, it's got a rod, a shaft, going all the way through that turns the pump on the other end.
I would know it, but
Yeah. Okay, now we're doing a little review on that test that we did the other day, and plus we're going to go through the other test, plus the test that I gave out. So I'm trying to do this quickly. What happens when fluid passes through a reduced opening? There you go. Tyler knows that answer. Pressure increases. And we talked about that is if we were measuring pressure here, and we had a gauge here and a gauge here, and we got stuff flowing through there, these gauges are going to read the same pressure unless you pinch this and make just a little small hole there. Then this, if the fluid's flowing this way, the pressure is going to go up, and that one's going to go down. See that? That's what happens on that. Okay.
what test are you talking about?
Right now I'm going over the very first one because a lot of people hadn't turned it in, and we're going to make sure that everybody's on the same sheet of music. I think some people have done it but didn't turn it in, but we're going over it anyway because we need to burn this stuff in. In a 1-to-1 gear ratio, the drive gear rotates A, slower than the gear it drives, B, the same speed as the gear it drives, or C, faster than the gear it drives. Same speed. Why does the transmission fluid transfer movement? The first answer is it maintains constant viscosity over a wide temperature range. Second one is, which would be B, it can't be compressed, or C, it resists chemical breakdown under extreme conditions. And then D would be it's primarily a mineral oil. The reason that fluid can transfer movement is the same thing we learned in brakes. Pascal's law. It can't be compressed. You don't compress fluids. Now, fluid will expand when it gets hot. That's why whenever you check a transmission fluid on a car that's hot, the fluid's higher on the stick than it is when it's cold. And that's why some dipsticks have got full cold and full hot. So if you pull the dipstick out on a cold transmission, even though you get the engine running, pull it out, everything's cold, it may look low. All right, now let me ask you this. If I'm down to that low mark on a transmission dipstick, how much fluid do I need to add to get it to the full one? Half a quart. Half a quart on a transmission. Now on an engine, it is 1 quart, and that's an easy mistake to make. But on your, another thing that used to mess me up, on these Power Stroke diesels they came out with, when it got down to that little mark, it was 2 quarts. 2 quarts when it got down to the low mark on the older Power Stroke diesels. All right, here we go. What's the role of the hydraulic valve? A, it applies and releases fluid coupling. B, modifies engine torque and speed. C, directs fluid flow or controls pressure. Or D, holds planetary gear set element. Hydraulic valve. Hydraulic valve is always going to direct fluid flow, guys, or control pressure. One of those two. What's the output from 1 to 4 gear ratio called? 1 turn of the input, 4 turns of the output. Is it pretty extreme, but what is that? Is it called reduction, direct drive, overdrive, or reverse? Overdrive, because the output's turning faster than the input, right? Okay, clutches and bands are applied and released by with the what? Planetary gear set, applied devices, driving devices, or hydraulic valve body? No, it's the valve body. You missed that one too. All right. What do driving devices do? Driving devices, what do they do? Somebody tell me. Do they transfer power from one component to the other? Do they hold gear elements into the case? Do they prevent gear elements from turning? A sounds good to me. They transfer power from a component. This was turning, and it's applied. The clutch is applied. Whatever the clutch is, you know, you got the little plates will have teeth on the outside of them, and the clutches will have teeth on the inside of them. When you mash all those together, it becomes one unit. And so whatever is turning, when they're not applied, the clutches, let's say we'll be sitting still, and the plates will be turning, but the clutches won't be turning with them until you pinch all that together, and then it's all going through. See, and you're basically, holding or driving different parts of the planetary gear set, or gear sets if it's got more than one. And, or you'll have, you got a one-way clutch that does that sort of thing too. But one way or another, which of these is a symptom of faulty transmission fluid pump? Excessive torque converter slippage, harsh shift feel, no engagement in any gear, or low fluid level? No engagement in any gear. Okay, what's the symptom of worn friction discs in a holding clutch? Slipping in the controlled gear, grinding or gear noise under load, stuck holding clutch, or harsh engagement? Worn friction discs in a holding clutch. You know good and doggone well it's going to slip in that gear, right? If you're looking at a Chrysler on your scan tool, you'll pull up your clutch volume index, and you can look at your clutch volume index numbers and tell which, of your clutch packs has been having to have more fluid delivered to it in order for it to hold. What happens inside the torque converter at higher speeds? Turbine spins slower than the impeller. The turbine and impeller spin at similar speeds. The turbine spins faster than the impeller. Yeah, they pretty much spin together at higher speeds. The torque converter is best described as an advanced valve that regulates and directs fluid flow. That's wrong. No way. A mechanism for holding and driving planetary gear sets. A fluid coupling that transmits power flow from the engine. How would you describe the torque and speed produced by a 1 to 4 gear ratio? High speed, low torque, high speed, high torque, low speed, low torque, low speed, high torque.
Low speed, high torque.
What?
High speed, low torque. Yeah.
Yeah, crossed those up, didn't he? Hydraulic pistons used to operate what? Servo, holding clutches, driving clutches, or most hydraulic applied devices? Hydraulic piston. Most hydraulic apply devices, actually. And the hydraulic piston is in the bottom of your clutch pack. Driving, remember, and it pinches those clutches because it moves a little bit. It doesn't move very much. It moves, it bites those clutches. And you've also, anything though, if you got pistons that are going to move in their board and it's hooked to a band, it's going to bite that. That kind of thing. There's all kinds of stuff that they do with hydraulic stuff. What do holding devices do? Do they transfer power, cause components to turn, prevent gear elements from turning? That's a good answer, Lawrence. Very good. Very good. All right. You guys probably need to take writing classes from Lawrence because he's got prettiest handwriting. He just writes. He writes so regular. What happens when fluid passes through an enlarged opening? Pressure increases. Pressure remains constant. Pressure decreases. Going to go lower. And what do you mean by this? Look.
If pressure being forced through a smaller hole, then the pressure will increase behind it.
Let's see if we can make this happen. If I take something like this, say I got a hose like that, and down here I got it in a tub, and I get my air hose. Now this is sort of a variant of what I'm talking about, and I blow air past there. What happens?
It pushes pressure down into the...
It actually pulls some of this up and out because it makes low pressure right here. But on your, your carburetor, stuff like that's going on too. You're going past the venturi and it's making low pressure. But whenever you change the size of openings and run fluid, run air past them and, change and restrict, you get all kinds of pressure change. The engineers use that to do things like they want to do. Okay. So pressure decreases. That's number 18. The transmission fluid pump outlet port leads to what? It's the first place that fluid goes when the pump picks it up is where? Torque converter. Yeah, I'm talking about to the torque converter. Which, yeah, you're thinking it's going to grab it and do stuff with it.
Why is the transmission in the rear is carbon?
What now?
This transmission is in the rear. It's carbon, right? Not a rear end. This transmission.
They didn't have nowhere else they could stuff it. Yeah, they were trying to make it.
I think that was pretty cool. I didn't even know it until yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, they just what they do is they engineer those things real crazy and all that.
What was next?
Corvettes, as far as Corvettes goes, you either love them or hate them. But I mean, it's a sexy ride.
You had to work on one?
Huh?
You
Yes.
had to work on one?
Yes. Nick's. Right. But anyway, let's see. Transaxle is different from a transmission because a transaxle does what? Does not require a torque converter, is controlled electronically, uses half shafts, or drives the fluid pump with input power. Uses half shafts. How do transmissions and transaxles produce the range of torque needed for normal driving? They provide different gear combinations, they vary the fluid pressure, they automatically shift gears. They're actually going to provide different gear combinations. Because different gear combinations would give you torque. How much horsepower your Corvette got? 400. How much does the car weigh?
About 3,200.
So you're going to take 400 horsepower and move a 3,200-pound car. Well, why is that not something that's going to work very well? You got to have torque. How do you get torque? You multiply the torque by going through the torque converter, into the transmission, through the gears, to the rear end. You're multiplying the torque 12 or 15 times before it gets to the wheels. If you just had the engine hooked directly to the wheels, you would think, this is just really crappy. This is a car will not even hardly go. Because you don't have that kind of torque, coming right out of the engine. Not what you need to do what you want to do on that Corvette. Of course, what you want to do on that Corvette is keep it between the ditches, don't get a ticket, and don't run from the law. Okay? That's not a good thing. No, not a good plan to do that. Okay? All right. And somebody held up their hand, but I'm not going to say who it was. Okay, now we got. All right. Now, what kind of transmission fluid pump uses a hub with a retractable vanes that slide along inside a movable bore ring? Gerotor pump, crescent pump, or variable displacement vane pump? Let's just go ahead and tell them the answer, right? It's going to be a vane pump. It's kind of like it's vaguely similar to that power steering pump I showed you with the back took off of it. That's a vane pump, but it doesn't have a movable bore ring, which is a transmission. And the movable bore ring is enables it to change the volume and stuff. Which of these is a pressure control valve? Check valve, spool valve, spring-loaded spool valve, or on-off valve?
Spool valve.
Spring-loaded spool valve. You're going to have a spring behind that spool valve. Remember, that's going to push that spool valve and squeeze that spring until it opens up a place where the fluid can go somewhere else. And you have regulated that pressure to what that spring calibration is. That's how that works. All right. In a 1 to 4 gear ratio, the drive gear rotates slower than the gear it drives, at the same speed as the gear it drives, faster than the gear it drives. Wait a minute, 1 to 4?
1 to 4, rotates slower.
What does the planetary gear set do? Hold and drive the planetary gear sets, produce various output ranges of torque and speed, provide fluid, reservoir, and hydraulic passage. Come on, you get various output ranges of torque and speed. That's the heart of the transmission, right? Okay, so that's the muscle part. Now, let's jump on over here to the pressure testing pop test.
Can you go back on one?
What?
Number 3?
Number 3? Transmission fluid pump is usually driven by the torque converter hub or pump input shaft. All right.
What's the pressure testing pop test look like? Pressure testing pop test?
It actually is a test that was with that handout on pressure testing. I gave you a handout. Yeah, I gave you a handout on pressure testing. You see that one?
I did some of those too. I think I must have done transmission pressure testing.
If
What look like
One he's got in his hand. Hold it up so Lawrence can see it.
I don't know about that.
That's
Yeah,
what
I think I
the
did.
handout looks like. There's a handout on top of that.
I think I
It's a
did.
very short read, but it's very good.
Make sure I did. It's a test right here? Oh, this is the handout. This ain't the test.
Test thing, I already did it.
Yeah, I did.
This the test? Yeah, pressure testing.
Yeah, I did.
All right, we're 15 minutes in, and we're going to be jumping to the pop test, and then we're going to do the test I gave out for this week. A stuck pressure regulator valve will show up how? If you got a stuck pressure regulator valve and you got your gauge in your hand, what does that mean? What are you going to see? What does your line pressure typically do?
Probably gonna go up.
If the stuck pressure regulator valve, you're always going to have fixed line pressure. It's never going to change.
Okay.
All right. Now then, next, that second question is, does anybody have that test still? You got that test in front of you?
Everybody type it in,
I
Huh?
got it. I was just looking here when I was trying to put it.
Yeah. Read that question really loud.
If a transmission has normal pressure in park, reverse, and neutral, but has low pressure in all four ranges, what is the probable cause?
If a transmission, let's say that again, has normal pressure in park and neutral, but has low pressure in all four ranges, what generally causes that? Because see, you're using your pressure gauge, and what we're going to do, if that Crown Victoria that JT did doesn't pull, we're going to put the pressure gauge on it, and we're going to see what's going on. That's part of the reason that I wanted to put that back in there. And because when we put it back in there, it didn't really matter to me if it worked or not, because if it doesn't work, we're going to find out why. And we're going to go back in there and we're going to fix it. And it's a good exercise. I ain't got no problem with that. I'm not wanting to drive the car. You know what I'm saying? What it's here for is to train on and all that. And he did go in there and he put all the seals in it. I know he did that. And he also put all the clutches in
There
it.
was seals laying all over the table.
I know they always are.
Brand new seals?
Yes. You're not going to use every last seal. I mean, you get a kit where you're doing that, you're going to have a bunch of seals that you're not going to use. This is all there is to it. I mean, that's not, I wasn't bothered by that because I've seen that myself. An internal leak causes that, guys. Well, they actually got to pull a valve body off. They got a plate on there, and they got the holes marked where you got first gear, second gear, reverse, and all this. And you can put air pressure in there and bench test them. And when you shoot that air pressure in there, where it says first gear, I mean, or the different, clutch packs and all. And if you hear it go thump, 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 you're okay at each place. But if you stick pressure up in there, it goes, somewhere there's, and so you said, aha, in my forward clutch pack, I've got an air leak somewhere. And then you're going to go back in there and you're going to look particularly at that clutch pack. That's what you're pressure testing for, and that's what you're doing all this troubleshooting. All right, so let's look at 3. What's 3? Read it. Let me see. Here, come over here. You need to be closer to me because I don't have a copy of them questions in front of me, and I need to know. All right, I'm going to hand you the test factor into it. When doing a stall test, what precautions should be taken?
Don't stand in front of people.
Yeah, everybody.
Well, if nobody's around but you, or if maybe everybody's on the other end of the shop.
Wish I could remember that.
Observe always safety precautions. It's just checking for broken mounts or bad brakes. You got a broke mount, the engine's going to try to jump out of the car. If the brakes are weak, the car's going to run off. Even at the assembly plant sometimes. So you go to some of these assembly plants, and they have these cars, the ones that they test to really put them on the dynamometer, and you'll see the ones down there that's jumped off the dynamometer and ran down there and ran into the wall. There's some of them down there all smashed up. Okay, so in what ranges should main line pressure be checked? In what ranges should main line pressure be checked? There's Wes dragging in. You're 2 hours late. Did you just skip your academic class, did you? You didn't skip your academic class, did you? Okay, all right. In what ranges should main line pressure be checked? Come on, guys. This ain't rocket science. The ones of you that have already done the test, you know it on top of your head. What range? I mean, well, you got a Prndl stick in front of you, right? You got, Prndl means PRNDL, right? should you check your main line pressure, and you're going to be stalling this thing every time you check the line pressure, should you check your line pressure in park?
No.
Should you check it in neutral? Duh. The answer to this question is all ranges except park and neutral. Reverse will typically have higher pressure than the other gears. Just remember that. And like I say, the one that's on the GMC is pretty cool because you're going to use the scan tool, and you're going to tell the pressure control to do certain things, and you're going to watch the pressure change in response to what you do with your scan tool. It's pretty neat how that works. All right. Number 5. Nick, hold your paper up here. I should have had that one. When checking main line pressure, what 3 operating conditions should be, under what 3 operating conditions should the line pressure be checked? Slow idle, fast idle, and wide open throttle. Very short handout. You can find these in your handout right there. Slow idle, fast idle, and wide open throttle. Okay. Number 6. If pressure are high at slow idle, it means what? If pressures are high at slow idle. Okay, let me tell you about what's going on here. Well, your pressure regulator to begin with is, well, most of them nowadays controlled by the computer anyway. It'll have a variable force solenoid in there, and it's going to decide what the pressure is going to be, and they'll have a transducer giving it feedback information. As a matter of fact, I think I've got a video where I took Michelle Taylor's Jeep gives trouble with the transmission sometimes, and I had a scan tool. I took my video camera, took the scan tool readings, and they have a target pressure that the computer's shooting for, and then they've got the actual pressure. And so a lot of times on your scan tool, you're going to see a target pressure, and if your target pressure is 125 pounds and the actual pressure is 60 pounds, we have a problem. Houston, okay, got that? All right, Houston, we have a problem. So that's one of the things you can do. The cool thing, like I say on some of these transmissions nowadays, a lot of them, you plug your scan tool, you go into transmission, you can read the pressures. You can read what it's shooting for and what it's got. See, that's the whole thing. Incidentally, this is all going to be on your final exam. You have to know it off the top of your head without a handout. So, all right, so memorize it. All right, so is that good? All right, and that's number, we need to go number 7. Oh, well, wait a minute, let me back up. Throttle pressure. What are we talking about when we say throttle pressure?
What we're talking about?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Pressure.
What Chrysler transmission has a vacuum modulator valve? None. Not even the old ones. Chrysler always used throttle pressure. And what I mean, don't, if you're lost when I'm talking about that, remember now, the older transmissions, they had a governor that would spin faster as the vehicle went faster. That's what the governor did. It would spin fast. It would spin fast. It's usually mounted on the output shaft. And on the GM, it had a gear, a little gear, and it would be spinning in a bore, and it would have counterweights. It would spin out, and that would move a valve. And as those valves moved, the pressure would increase. Governor pressure would go up, and it would force the next shift. Right? You go up, and boom, and drop into the next gear. Go up, and drop into the next gear. The vehicle speed actually was measured by the governor. Everybody understand that, and that was for a long time. Up and through the most of the 1980s. Okay, now then, what we did but wait a minute, we don't want it, and we talked about this a little bit the other day, but I want to make sure we burned it in. We don't want the transmission to shift up to the next gear. Like if you go and take off real slow on your car with an automatic transmission, when is yours going to shift from first to second? About what speed? Real slow. I mean, you're just taking off real gentle. You're afraid you're going to tear something up. You ease on 10, 12 miles an hour. Well, wait a minute. What if you stand on it, stroker, because there's a bandit on your tail? What is happening then? How long does it take for it to shift from first to second when you're wide open throttle? And don't tell me you haven't been there. Okay? Okay, you got your 2008 Corvette, wide open throttle. When's it going to shift from first to second? Huh?
Take a while for it to shift.
Yeah, it's going to hold them longer. Just like if you were shifting it by hand with a manual transmission and you're trying to build up all the speed you can, you're going to keep it in first longer.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go back to second. Now, if you speed shift and all that stuff, you're going to mess stuff up in the transmission, and the clutch is going to be, So anyway, so it's going to shift later, right? So we want it to shift later. How are we going to make it shift later if an automatic transmission is fully hydraulic, no electronics on it?
I'll change the screw on that.
No, I mean, this is something that's got to be dynamic. It's got to be something that already knows how to do. Now, on the old Chevys, On the old Chevys and old Fords, we had a vacuum line running from the engine down to a modulator valve.
Yeah.
And that modulator valve, when it had high vacuum, would actually have that pressure lower where it would totally shift based on what the governor told it. Well, whenever the vacuum goes away, because when you're deep into the throttle, where does the vacuum go? It goes down, right? When the vacuum goes away, it holds the gears longer because the modulator pressure is fighting the governor pressure. Modulator pressure is strong enough to push governor pressure back, and it's a valving thing in a valve line, more or less. All right, so it's able to hold those gears. The pressure's got to go high enough to overcome that, when you're speeding, to overcome that other pressure. All right, now then, what we have, we also got, let's do away with the modulator valve. And some smart aleck over at Chrysler says on their 727 torque flat and their 904 and all that, they said, why don't we just hook a spring and a lever up and go down to the transmission, and let's just move a valve manually based on where the throttle is. If he's deeper into the throttle, then it'll hold the gears longer. In other words, your throttle pressure is actually what's going to overcome your governor pressure and hold your gears longer. See, that's something you need to understand. Okay, now, Ford went to that in like 1979 on their automatic overdrive transmission, except they used a cable, and General Motors used a cable too, an adjustable cable. Well, on this cable, you could actually hook a gauge up, and the transmission mechanic at Bondage used to do it all the time, and when I was doing transmissions over, I did it too. We'd hook this gauge up, and we would set the throttle valve pressure to what the book called for, because it's going to affect shift feel and all that. Now, throttle valve pressure is something that's pretty critical to set just right. Now, on my Jeep has got an electronic transmission on it, but I can set the throttle valve pressure on my Jeep, and I can show you all how to do it. I mean, right there standing there flat-footed under the hood, I can show you how to do it. It ain't that hard to do on those. And on the GM cars, it was like that. You push this little thing to release it, and you drag that cable back, and you get there and you push your gas pedal all the way to the floor, and you hear that little cable ratchet out. Well, it's adjusted. That's all there is to it on those. Now, on the Ford, you had to do some stuff with a little screw and this kind of thing. But one way or another, that throttle valve pressure is really important, because the deeper you go into the throttle, the longer it holds gears. Now, some of them, like in Mazdas, like in the early 80s when I was working at a Mazda dealership, they had a little switch down there. Well, when you push the gas pedal all the way to the floor, it go click, and click that switch, and that would cause it to go into passing gear.
Oh, man, that's cool.
See what I'm saying? So there was a lot of stuff going on like that. Anyway, I'm just trying to make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. But we don't need to blow past this and say B8 and all that kind of stuff. And because somebody's talking about, you need to be able to intelligently discuss this. All right. So pressure regulator or throttle valve or throttle pressure problem, be the throttle valve pressure problem would be that number 6. Okay, number 7. Question number 7 is actually going to be a restricted filter is going to show up as what? If you got your pressure gauge on it and you find out it's got a restricted filter, how are you going to find that out? How are you going to figure out that you got a restricted filter if you got a pressure gauge hooked to it? Let's say that you've hooked your pressure gauge, you've checked the fluid is full of fluid. You're driving it down the road, and you want to see if your filter is restricted. What are you going to see?
Lower pressure.
You're going to see a gradual pressure drop at higher RPM, because it's going to see a gradual pressure drop. It's kind of like on the people will, what's wrong with this picture? Somebody's got a car that's not starting good or won't idle or something like that. What do they want to do a lot of times? Let's put a fuel filter on it. What's that going to do? I mean, what's that going to do for idling or starting hard? Typically, the fuel filter shows up how? How do you know you need to replace? Yeah, when you're passing a doggone semi going up a hill, you got your foot all the way to the floor and it feels like you're letting off. Well, that transmission fluid is going to do the same deal. You're going to see a gradual pressure drop. If you had your fuel pressure gauge hooked up, see, you'd see a gradual fuel pressure drop at higher RPM. You remember the one that had a weak fuel pump out here? And you guys didn't see it, and Brandon didn't see it, and Daigle didn't see it, but y'all were here at the time. It was last semester. We hooked a fuel pressure gauge up to this Ranger that was not running right, and we pulled the fuel pressure regulator vacuum line off so that the pressure would go up to 40 pounds, which is where it goes on that particular one. And we snapped the throttle, with the fuel pressure. If the fuel pressure drops when we snap the throttle sitting still, we know we ain't got good fuel pressure. We put a filter on it first, and then we put a pump in it. The other thing is if it's got weak voltage going to the pump, not turning it fast enough, but that ain't hardly ever happened. All right, now then, let's move on. Number 8. If pressures are low at slow idle, Number 8. If all pressures at stall are low, you should do what? Remember what I was just talking about, the throttle valve cable. Hear me? Let's pull the throttle valve cable all the way, and it's going to make it think it's at wide open throttle to the maximum, or disconnect the vacuum line going to the modulator. Modulator vacuum line is going to make, if you unhook that, pressure will go all the way up.
Yeah.
Any of you? Huh?
I just pull that off and take off on my car and race people.
Yeah, you pull it off and it holds the gears all the way, and then when it does shift, it jerks a crick in your neck when it shifts. Bam! You know? One time when I was working at that car dealership over there, there was a problem. The Aerostar was given. The service manager happened to be driving the same kind of Aerostar that I was working on because he had a demo that he drove. And I went through all my diagnostics, and I came to the conclusion it was the engine controller. And I got to looking at the service manager's, and it was always sitting there with a key in it. I looked at the one that he drove, which was a demo, and I said, I think I'm going to jerk the engine controller out of this sucker and put it in this other one and see if it fixed it. So I pulled one out of his, and I popped it in this other one, and it shifted normally, and everything was fine. And so then I swapped them back. And I said, that Aerostar I'm working on needs an engine controller. And he said, how do you know? I said, because I swapped yours and his around, and now you got his and he's got yours. Well, I don't want that. So I said, if you don't think his engine controller is bad, what's the problem? But anyway, that's one of the ways I've troubleshot that one to make sure that it was easy to make sure I was right about it. And I kind of felt like, okay, so you unplug your vacuum modulator line or you pull the throttle valve cable, okay, to see if the pressure is normalized, right? That's just one of the things you're going to do. So number nine reads, if pressures are low at slow idle, it usually means a potential problem in the pump, pressure regulator, low fluid, or internal leakage. Right? You got that? Now, number 10, and then we're going to move on to this next test. Tyler needs to be in here. I don't know where he went. Install a pressure gauge on a vehicle. The answer to number 10 is if a person's serious about becoming pressure gauge proficient, you're going to put a pressure gauge on your vehicle, and you're going to drive it for a week and watch the pressure gauge during normal operation. Now, what do you drive?
Toyota Tacoma.
Toyota Tacoma? Okay. Find out where your line pressure port is on your Toyota Tacoma next time, when you get a chance. Find out where it is. If you're going to hook a pressure gauge up to it, you find out where it is on your Dodge. Okay? You know what? Hey, he's one of the Fantastic Four guys. They use a Dodge. Fantastic Four? That thing that flies a Dodge and all that stuff. They have a little Dodge grill on it and all that. All right, now then, we're going to move away from our transmission pressure testing. Daigle, tell Tyler if he wants to go over today's test with us, he needs to get back in here. I don't know where he went. And he may have gone to the restroom or something. All right, I'm trying to get this stuff done quick, but I don't want you guys to be dreadfully disappointed, okay? He's coming on in. We're doing the last one. That's fine. I just want to make sure you didn't miss out on this one that I gave out this week because we're just starting on it right now. Okay. All right. You got that? Okay, let's see if we can whip through these pretty quick right here. An electronically controlled automatic transmission uses a complex hydraulic system to regulate shift timing. Now that is, according to your book, that says false, but that right there is really a bad question, and I'll tell you why. Even though these electronically controlled automatic transmissions have got solenoids and stuff in them, whoever wrote this book and wrote that question has never torn apart a RE401 Nissan transmission. It's got 4-shift solenoids and all the other goodies in there, but it's got a valve body like you wouldn't believe. I'm talking about seriously complex. So that's not even a good question. Now, false is the answer that the book is looking for. Go with that, so you won't get it wrong, but I'm telling you, that ain't a good question. Number 2, a continuously variable transmission allows the engine to stay within its power band. True. What would you compare a continuous variable transmission to? A go-kart. Yeah. The pulleys on the go-kart, these pulleys go together, and those come apart, and those go together just kind of automatically with speed. It's got a centrifugal clutch, and and that's what it does. A continuous variable transmission has got a big chain in there instead of a belt. Now the ones that are continuously variable on the the ones that are continuously variable on the doggone hybrid vehicles have got a planetary gear set in them, and they use their motors to do that. Got that? All right. Yeah. All right. Now then, transverse mountings are primarily used on rear-wheel drive vehicles in which the engine is mounted side to side. What is wrong with that? Okay, how many of you can tell me tell me about a front-wheel drive vehicle that's got the engine mounted north-south?
Oh, I can tell you that.
Look, this right here, this is north-south, and that's east-west. This is your vehicle, that's your wheels. All right, if I got an engine mounted this way, but it's front-wheel drive, give me an example of one. Okay, what else?
Straight seats.
What about that Acura Vigor? They only made that 3 years with 5 cylinders. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it probably got the same powertrain than what he's talking about is. All right, what about an Audi 5000 or a Volkswagen Quantum? Those are made up that way. Well, what about an American car? Eagle Vision. Eagle Vision. Eagle Premier. An Eagle Vision is like a Dodge Dynasty. You know what I'm saying? No, a Vision is a bigger car. It's like it's big as a Crown Victoria, but it's the engine is mounted north-south, but it's front-wheel drive. I got one of them transmissions over there.
So that means it's weird.
Yeah, how does it work?
Huh?
How does it work?
Can we pull one up on the internet or something?
Yeah. Well, basically on that Vigor, the transmission is mounted just like it would be on a regular motor, but the output shaft comes right out the front of it by the torque converter and goes to the differential.
Oh, it goes to differential.
The differential, yeah. It's always going to go to a differential. You always got a differential. I'll tell you another one that was set up that way. Dorado Cadillac, early 80s. Engine setting like this, engine setting like that. I had to pull the doggone engine and transmission out of one of them stupid things because this guy ran over a muffler that was laying in the road. He busted a transmission housing. He messed up his oil pan. I had to pull all that mess out of an insurance job. And that was horrible. It was a diesel, too. Diesel Eldorado. 82 model. 82. Eldorado with a diesel. In the early 80s, diesel was really catching on for a while.
The diesel computer in the gasoline Eldorado.
Yeah.
Hit the blinker, the car dies.
Huh?
Hit the blinker and the car dies. You know that book you gave us last semester?
Yeah.
I read it.
Yeah, that, hey, I found the Loosen Up book.
Oh, okay.
Somebody put the diesel engine in the gasoline.
I'm going to tell you guys that, if you haven't read that book, that is a really good book.
I started reading it.
They've got a copy of it at the bookstore for $16. It's a really good book. If you're talking about fixing cars, 30 years, that guy, he's telling stories from 30 years of having a shop. And he's on my Facebook friends list. And he bought a copy of my book, so I bought a copy of his book. And I read it and liked it. And so then I gave a copy of it to Amanda after she left here because she didn't get a chance to read it. Her daddy read it in one sitting. He didn't stop reading it until he was done with it. It's an interesting book. It's fun to read, Yeah, it's a good book. It's not boring at all.
Once you start reading the first page or the second page, you'll be already into it.
Yeah, baby. All right, then. All right, we'll keep going. In longitudinal mounting, the transmission or transaxle is mounted front to back. Longitudinal.
Longitudinal is like straight up, forward up and up.
That's north-south, isn't it?
Yeah.
Transverse is sideways. Okay, now let me ask you this. On these, the transmission over there that Archie's going to get to put back together by himself today, unless I get somebody to help him. Lawrence, you might want to give him a hand with that.
Yeah, Lawrence think you take one apart.
Automatic transmission. You want to work with Archie on getting that transmission? It already took apart. Y'all got to put it back together.
Oh, I don't know. I might want to see it when I take it apart.
Well, Archie was there.
Oh,
I was there, yeah.
Yeah, Archie, you got. I want y'all to do that because you need to. Somebody's going to pull a transmission out of this Dodge van too.
Not me.
And I think I'll have Wes do that. Okay. All right. Now then, we promised that girl that we were going to let you do that whenever she came in here. So.
Yeah, remember that was?
Yeah. All right.
I
So.
remember Richard promised me that.
Yeah. Well, you were just sitting there grinning and all that. Cause,
I wasn't either.
you was grinning at her because she was kind of cute. That's what it was.
Oh, she was great.
Yeah.
I was at the front end.
Yeah.
I was at the front end.
Now then, listen to this. Although, longitudinal. What I was going to say was the one that y'all are talking about tearing back together. tearing back together, putting back apart. What does this stand for? Watch this. 4L60E. 4-speed, longitudinal. Torque rating is 60 and it's electronic. That's on the GM. What if I said 4T60E? Transverse. Got it? Now, those words don't always mean anything at all. I mean, in other words, sometimes you can figure them out, and that's what these mean. But like on the Ford, they had they had the old C6, then they had a C4, whoopee, C4. All right, then they got an E4OD, which is electronic 4-speed overdrive. And then they decided to change that to a 4R100. What's up with that? They change all of that stuff around all the time. So, just go figure,
What's the Army?
I have no clue. That's what I'm saying. It's a 4R100. Maybe I should know, but I don't, so I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, so although the composition of ATF has changed over the years, most automatic transmission fluids can be used in all vehicles.
Manual vehicles can't call for automatic transmission.
Yeah, but you can't just pour any kind of fluid in any. You're really supposed to pour Mercon in that Ford. You're supposed to pour your Mopar Plus and your Chryslers and all that. And let me tell you about this little story. And some of y'all may have heard me tell that, or I don't know if I've told it or not. Adam Snap was working over at Auto Exchange for a while. Adam Snap gets a crate transmission from Ford. It comes with a fluid in it. The crate transmission comes with a fluid in it. He swaps it out of his Windstar. His Ford Windstar is there. And when he gets it swapped out, he drives it. Everything's fine. And so they come back and they said, it doesn't feel right.
This man just walked up in here and started lifting up the neon.
Yeah.
Oh,
That is Buck Henry. He's working on a front end machine.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that sold me the front end machine. He told me he was coming today, so I know who he is.
I just heard it clicking and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm talking my feet.
That's a pretty good ear there. All right. But anyway, so Jimmy over at the Ford place, he told me, he said, this transmission's not working right that I got, the crate transmission we got from Ford put in this thing. What do I need to do? I said, it's under warranty. Send it to the Ford place, let Jimmy look at it. So Jimmy calls me and says, it's got the wrong fluid in it. That's what I
Crate motor?
Yeah. The crate transmission. And I said, well, think about this. Did it have a label on it telling them what fluid it put in there? It came with the fluid in it. It was a transmission, crate transmission. And so I says, Jimmy, how did you know it had the wrong fluid in it? He said, I can smell it. Well, really he can, because it's got friction modifier in it. And that friction modifier is in there so that when the torque converter clutch is partially applied, it's supposed to be a controlled slip. The friction modifier makes it slip smoothly. It's supposed to slip because you'll have 20%, 30%, 40%, and finally you work up to 100% lockup. But it's not, the lockup's not a steady bam like this. It's like a controlled slip. And if you got a controlled slip transmission, it doesn't have friction modifier in there, you're going to feel like an EGR surge.
That's kind of like when Levi got that Cavalier first before it, put gear oil in the transmission.
Ouch.
And
Oh, man.
blew it out the
Bad news. Anyway, so Jimmy, if you got one that's surging, and you can determine the torque converter's causing it, by tapping. Sometimes you can. Usually, a lot of them you can tap the brake and it unloads the torque converter, drops out the torque converter. So listen to this: you got first, you got second, you got third. In third gear, your torque converter typically locks up and gives you 1-to-1 from the engine all the way back to the drive shaft, right?
Yeah.
But on the way up, it's giving you the 20, 30, 40, 50%, finally 100% lockup, and you can read it on your scan tool. In fourth gear is your overdrive, and that's the one where you've got lockup and overdrive. That really gives you the good gas mileage. Got that? You understand that? If you're driving along in your high gear and you crowd the throttle a little bit, and you see the RPM going up faster than the engine speed, what's that telling you? Tells me the torque converter slipping, and it ain't supposed to when it's in lockup. So if it's 100% lockup on your scan tool, you crowd the throttle a little bit, and you see the RPM going up. It's like a clutch slipping on a car that's got a clutch. You got a steady lockup on that thing, and if it's 100% lockup, it ain't supposed to slip at all. Now if you stand on it, it's going to unlock it. But if you just crowd the throttle a little bit at about 45, 50 miles an hour, the RPM on the engine speed and the RPM ought to move up together, just real gentle. But if the engine RPM is moving up faster, you got a slipper. Understand that? I actually got a handout to show you how you can calculate the slippage using gear ratios and speed and all this kind of stuff. Okay, that's another story. Let's see. You can't use transmission fluid in any and all vehicles. Technician who orders transmission parts needs to know the model year of the car.
True.
The thing that they really need to know too, in a lot of cases, they'll want you to give them some numbers. Sometimes nowadays, if they're asking for the VIN number off the car, they may ask for the number on the transmission. That's why some of them sheets I gave you tells you how to go find the number on the transmission. Petroleum-based automatic transmission fluids offer better durability under higher temperatures and better lubrication qualities than synthetic automatic transmission fluid. Oh yeah, there's synthetic gear grease that goes in the rear end. About $18 a quart, you know. But that is actually false because the synthetic is going to do better. However, you will pay through the nose for it. Petroleum-based ATF automatic transmission fluid offers, never mind, I've read the same question twice. Viscosity additives help keep the automatic transmission fluid from becoming too thick at low temperatures and too thin at high temperatures. Actually, automatic transmission fluid is what some of your soldiers like to squirt in their machine gun to keep it lubricated because it does well at high temperatures.
So it's true?
Huh?
It's true, right?
Yeah. Yep. 8, that's true. Automatic transmission fluid is usually dyed red. I've never seen any that wasn't dyed red. This is red as a watermelon, okay? All right. Why do they do this? So you can tell what's leaking. Yeah, different color. It's red, it's transmission fluid. It's dark color, it's engine oil. Power steering fluid, can be mistaken for engine oil because antifreeze is usually green or orange. See, so you can see what it is. Common foot powder or a black can be used for finding the source of an ATF leak. Foot powder. How are you going to use foot powder? You paint that sucker with foot powder, and everything's going to be white, and then the oil is going to come seeping through. It works, man. You can do all kind of cool stuff. You need foot powder in your toolbox. That's just all there is to it. You got a wind noise. Somebody says, hey, this car's got a wind noise. They haven't given you a wind noise thing. Open up your door, and you spray, like if it's nearly a new car, it's got wind noise. Open up your car, and where the gasket is, where it seals out the air, spray all that. And then whenever you close it, well, actually, you're going to spray the car or the gasket, just one or the other. You don't spray both. You just spray one. Like to spray the gasket with foot powder. Don't hurt a doggone thing. It's just going to make it white. Yeah, foot powder. And you close the door real gentle, and then you open it back up in the place where it didn't wipe the foot powder out. It's where the air's getting in there. See the cool stuff? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's just common sense.
And also, if the person smokes, you can shut the door, have the door shut completely, and light a cigarette and see where the smoke's going out.
Well, but he left out the part you turn the blower motor on high. You put it on norm air, you turn the blower motor on high, that makes a positive pressure inside the car, and you hold your cigarette outside the car and where it blows the smoke away. Or you could use your smoke machine, Of course, the guy that smokes it. But don't, now one thing that doesn't work is don't get your Copenhagen and spit past the door everywhere to see where it blows the spit. Don't work. All right, so, yeah. Okay, let's whip through the rest of these. I need to get this done. We've only got 747,212 questions left to go. All right. Which of the following is not a main function of an automatic transaxle? A, it allows the driver to change vehicle direction. That is a main function, isn't it? B, it allows the engine to supply power and torque to the vehicle's drivetrain. C, it provides various gear ratios to ensure good engine performance and fuel economy. Or D, it provides manual upshifts and downshifts. D is the right answer to that one. Okay. Okay, number 12 what determines the power band? Engine camshaft profile, air and fuel delivery, cylinder head design, all the above. That's right. Number 13, a blank transmission controls shift point timing through signals from a computer. Conventionally controlled, electronically controlled, continuously variable, or all of the above. It's going to be electronically controlled, is it not? All right. All righty. 14, which of the following is not a method of correctly identifying the transmission? That's number 14. Mounting configuration. You can't just go into the parts room, guys, and say, I've got a longitudinal transmission and I need a filter kit for it. They're going to say, excuse me? Is it a 700R4, 4L60E? What is it? What kind of vehicle is it? Yeah, well, not a method. The seal ring that requires special installation tools is a what kind of ring? Solid ring. A solid Teflon seal ring's got to have special tools to get it on there. And let's go ahead and see if we can knock these out. Give me, which one of these is, let's do a matching. You got matching questions or are you done? You don't have matching questions, do you? You don't have any matching questions. I think I deleted those from your test. Yeah, the matching. Yeah, you do have matching questions, don't you? It won't take us but a minute to do those. RPM range within which vehicle delivers maximum torque.
Hey, Mr. Richard, where's his box?
Huh? No, Daigle? Oh, did you not get one? How come you have not said anything before now?
All I got was this.
You all right?
I need to test too. I don't know all the answers.
You take that one. And I'll give you the other one in a minute. All right. What's the RPM range within which the engine delivers maximum torque? 16.
We don't know that.
Huh?
It's not at 15.
What did you just show me a minute ago?
Manual transmission test.
Never mind. Okay, you got the manual transmission. Okay.
Oh, my bad.
Never mind. We won't go over those right now because we need to get old Nick out in the shop. Ain't that right, Nick?